Hello, Aaron Whitlow here from the Mark Movie Podcast, and welcome to a episode of Clearing My Queue. I have many episodes, not only me, but Brandon has many episodes of Clearing My Queue on the Anchor.fm platform. You can also see it, listen to it on Spotify, uh, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, different places like that. So please feel free to check us out there. But yeah, anyway, in this episode of Clearing My Queue, I'm doing Royal Pains, which I actually binged on Netflix. It leaves Netflix today on the 17th. So if you're looking at checking it out on Netflix, I'm sorry, you got to find the next streaming service that hosts that series.
My independence went away. I didn't listen when it said.
An unfairly discredited but brilliant diagnostic surgeon winds up working with his cheesy brother in the Hamptons as a concierge doctor to the uber rich and ultra elite. And it stars Mark Forsting, Paulo Costanzo as Evan R. Lawson, Rishma Shetty as Divya Kadari, Brooke D'Orsay as Paige Collins, Campbell Scott as Boris Koster von Jurgens Rushnick, and then Jill Flint as Jill Casey, and then Ben Schickman as Jeremiah Sakarni. I didn't know how to say his last name in the show. Uh, but anyway, the ratings for this show is as follows. IMDb gives it 7 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes 94% like this show. 8.5 on TV.com out of 10 on TV.com. And 91% of Google users like this show. Audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is 73%, and then the critics are average tomato meter score critics 94%. So this was a very successful show. The season had the series had 8 seasons, uh, and this is gonna have spoilers. So spoiler warning right now. Um, so the show starts off with Hank uh, playing basketball with a bunch of guys in like Brooklyn or somewhere in New York. I believe it's Brooklyn, and and playing basketball, and one guy has a heart attack on the court, and so he rushes over to him as a doctor, and thinks fast, puts 2 gym bags next to his head to stabilize him, stabilize his neck. Use water, ice to cool off his groin and his underarms and stuff like that, just to cool his body down. They did a lot of stuff essentially just to save the guy's life, and he got him into the ER. But at the same time he's in the ER, one of like the um, people from the I guess one of the board members of the hospital, had some type of heart attack or had some type of issue, and it was in ER as well. Um, and they wanted Hank to leave the black guy, the basketball player, and go and help this, white guy. I'm gonna say that's how I looked at it. Um, and he, chooses to stick with the patient that he had to fix it, and then I think he tried to go over and fix the other guy, but the wealthy guy died, but the black guy lived. But because of that, he was discredited and essentially fired from his job, and his fiance left him because of him being fired, um, and he was essentially at home uh, eating and drinking and watching Netflix. Using Netflix and chilling without no one there. His brother Evan comes by and get him, talks him into going to the Hamptons for the weekend, just get away. And as he gets there, he's at they sneak into a party in actually what ends up being which ends up being
Boris Kuster von Jurgens Ratnich.
castle. He has a castle. So they sneak into this party, and while they're there, someone has what looks like an overdose, and the concierge doctor was coming to give her adrenaline or whatever, just kind of get her back. But Hank looked at her and diagnosed her and said, "No, it's not that. It's something else." And so, properly diagnosed her. If they would have gave her the adrenaline, I guess it would have killed her. But Hank was able to bring her back, and she was good. And he also meets Jill at that party because they both drive a very similar car. But anyway, he essentially stays there. Divya approaches him about being a concierge doctor and her being his physician's assistant, which she can do pretty much everything he does. But she's not a doctor. And so he and Boris tells him about being the concierge doctor as well. He eventually decides to stay. He stays because he has feelings for Jill. And he accepts a position as a concierge doctor and lives at Boris's home in his guest home, which is pretty big in itself. It's like, it has upstairs, downstairs. It's pretty huge place. And that's where the main set of the show is the guest home. Boris also, you find out, has a rare condition that affects all men in his lineage. They all break down. They get dementia. They die at a young age. And Hank's able to properly treat him and give him years on his life. And so that's pretty dope. But what I don't like about the show, what I did not like about the show rather, was that the show tends to skip ahead at times, and I feel like you miss something. And I understand it's just trying to progress the story, but I don't really care for that. I also don't care for some of the things that they try to do, but I'm glad that they didn't. Like later on, Jeremiah comes on to Hank Med, so they form Hank Med. It's where Evan's the CFO. Divya is the physician's assistant, and Hank is the doctor. They formed this, but later on they decided to bring another doctor in to kind of help carry the load, and they bring in Jeremiah. He's very alien-like. The way he acts is alien-like. But he's very blunt. He's a very blunt person. He doesn't sugarcoat things because he doesn't know how to do that. But anyway, I bring him up because later on they toy around with the idea that he is in love with Divya, and later on when Divya finds out, they toy around with maybe this might be something. But I'm glad they didn't go that way because nobody wants that. Nobody wanted that. I know I didn't want it. If some people may want it, but eventually they did give everybody proper story arcs, and I love that. I love that Hank. So Jill later on leaves like a couple of seasons in to go to Africa to kind of help with setting up medical things there, and she does a really good job there. And so she leaves. The Hamptons leave Hank, and but Hank is in love with her. He really is, and she's in love with him. But they revisit it. So Hank has different relationships with different women, but none of them stick. None of them work because he really wanted Jill. So everyone had their proper story arcs in the 8th season. In the last couple of episodes, they was able to really get people's stories really, really good. And the 8th season to me was the best season. I'm trying to think of his name, Jeremiah again. Jeremiah ends up dating a lady that's similar to him. She's an author, but he really falls for her and she falls for him. And I like that they kind of have each other and they kind of help each other. Evan obviously ends up dating Paige Collins. Paige Collins eventually becomes his wife, Paige Evans. They try to get pregnant for the last couple of seasons, but finally, eventually ended up getting pregnant. But also, Evan later on becomes not just CFO Hank Med, he becomes like the like in charge of the hospital. He's that guy, and he also becomes like a city council member. He like really does a lot of stuff. But anyway, they get married and have get pregnant. But there's this family of orphans essentially, and they bring them into their family. They bring them into their life and adopt them, and which was really cool. Another thing I want to talk about real quick, thinking about it, the show does this, and I didn't like this. The show has product placement, but it's like so obvious. They had Car Guru or something like that. They had an episode where I know how to explain this real quick before I get that. So Hank and Evan find out that they have a sister that comes in. Her name's Emma. So Hank's father had a little hanky panky with another lady years ago, and they have a younger sister. The sister comes and stays with them for a while, but they don't understand how, like, they don't fully trust her. They don't know her motives. But in one episode, just in the middle of the episode, she's like, I'm getting a car on like one of these car apps.com or something like that. And they literally showed her picking the card, showing her phone, picking the car and doing that. And they said it's just that easy and it's gonna be here on Tuesday, something like that. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that was just so bad. They do the same thing for Zillow later on. They mention Zillow and then they show Zillow and show how easy it is to scroll through Zillow, which you should really never trust Zillow. Unless Zillow wants to sponsor this, then Zillow is the best place ever. Anyway, they do that, and also they have like guest stars that come in, that like Khloe Kardashian, The Big Show, which that episode wasn't too bad, but they do that, and I didn't really care for that. But let me get back to it real quick. Everybody's story arc. Hank's story arc is eventually going to be with Jill in Africa, and they get engaged, and they come back to the Hamptons yearly, like for the summer. And Hank Med is still in business. Divya goes on to be a doctor, and she goes on to marry the guy that her parents set up for her to marry. So that was pretty. No, they didn't marry then. They came back to one another after they both had relationship and kids and everything. They came back together and knew that they were in love with one another, and they got married. And so that story arc was really good.
Her way back to Raj, we thought maybe Jeremiah. Oh, come on, you saying you didn't think they'd hook up? You a liar! So
they wrapped up everybody's story really well, and so I like that. The last season was the funniest season to me. Jeremiah and Divya go to see Jeremiah's parents, and they have a dog, and the dog is pregnant. And he's like, I need a ultrasound. And she's like, I'll run and get it. She's pregnant. She's really pregnant. And they show her get up. It's like, she used to rush off to get stuff real quick, but camera lingered on her, pregnant, waddling in the sand on her way. It took so long. It was just funny. It's perfect comedy. The next to last episode in the last season was a musical, which actually it wasn't terrible.
I had hypertensive nephropathy.
Yeah, you did.
You knew it was licorice poisoning, not hyperoxexia.
Well,
I had somatic skeletal neuromuscular dysfunction.
yeah, I know.
Who are you? Where is dinner?
and they explained how it was a musical, which was great. But then the last episode, there's no patience. It's mainly just setting up people's story arcs. And but yeah, the show overall was good. My markouts for this film, show, I give it 4 markouts out of 5. It was nearly a perfect show. It was entertaining. I never was really truly bored. I never was like, I'm just gonna give up. I just didn't think I'd finish it in time. I'm glad I was able to finish it. He's almost like MacGyver, and they make reference to that whole MacGyver thing. And I, which I like that. It's like tongue in cheek. And in between time and in the meantime, thank you for marking out with me here on the Mark Out Movie Podcast. I'm Aaron Whitlow. We appreciate your support.